Hi, I'm Kim Masters. Thanks for listening to The Business. Some of the most entertaining stories produced today aren't just on the big screen. They can be heard on KCRW's Unfictional. Intimate tales and artful documentaries crafted by some of the most talented radio producers across the globe. Check it out. You can find Unfictional on KCRW's iTunes page. From KCRW and KCRW.com, I'm Kim Masters, and this is The Business.
It was sort of like a scavenger hunt. One person would say, well, I think when she was in Switzerland, she left her stuff with this friend of hers, and we would go to Switzerland and find that friend of hers, so it was really kind of a game of telephone.
For her new film, What Happened to Miss Simone, director Liz Garbus scoured the globe for footage of famed musician and activist Nina Simone. Finding and licensing the material could have taken years, but Garbus had a deep-pocketed backer. She tells us how she came to make the first original documentary for Netflix. But first on the news banter, Brian Williams is credible enough for MSNBC. Stay tuned, it's The Business from KCRW. I'm joined by my fellow banterer, Matt Bellany of The Hollywood Reporter. Hello, Matt.
Hi there.
So it has already been revealed and hashed over quite a bit that Brian Williams is not being booted altogether from the NBC world. He's going to be covering breaking news at MSNBC. This is not something that I think is going to ultimately go down all that smoothly because, of course, if you have a person whose issue is credibility, I'm not sure how having this person in the news chair for breaking news, I mean, maybe he never exaggerated or fibbed about breaking news, but we now perceive him as a person who's not entirely straightforward and lacks that very important credibility. But this is a solution that NBC Universal came up with to solve a problem.
Yeah, I think this is the equivalent of a rehab assignment in AAA, if you use this in baseball terms. I mean, he is being essentially sent to the farm team at MSNBC to see what people think. Will they accept him there? Are they not going to watch and protest? And, one part of this that is getting less attention, but he's going to be filling in for Lester Holt, who is the new permanent NBC nightly news host. So he will be hosting nightly news, just not every day. And I think they're going to see what the ratings are when he's doing it, see how well he does, see if people accept him. And this is all part of a slow path towards rehabilitation for Brian Williams.
Well, that's the hope. I mean, NBC has a lot of money. They had renewed his contract for 5 years, $10 million per year. So there may have been, I'm sure there was a lot of legal evaluation going on about whether they could fire him and whether they wanted to fire him. And he obviously did not choose or want to be fired. What really pushes my buttons as a journalist is he apparently, part of this negotiation was how much he balked at even apologizing for what clearly, is such an egregious breach of what a network anchor should be. And I don't care who's watching or not watching. To me, there are only very few big broadcast networks that do a national nightly news broadcast. And those networks, which reach by far the most people, that is a very exclusive club. And I'm not sure you should belong in it if you've had a credibility problem. And even when Lester Holt's on vacation, and I'm going to say they're going to tell Lester Holt not to plan any vacations for quite a while.
Oh, I think the opposite. I think that they are going to let Lester Holt have his time in the chair and, establish himself as an anchor. But I think the goal of this is to bring Brian Williams back and kind of test him out, see if people don't watch or watch more when he's there. They are in a very, very close fight with ABC for this ratings crown that they all covet. And I think Brian Williams is an established news celebrity. He is someone that has name value and brand value in a way that Lester Holt doesn't, at least not yet. So if he can be rehabilitated, he can be very valuable to NBC.
Well, clearly this isn't going down well within the corridors of NBC News. I mean, a lot of people who feel that this is just a bridge that you can't recross. And also the decision to have Matt Lauer do this interview with him is a peculiar one. I mean, I think Matt Lauer is probably capable of doing a decent interview. But again, where is the sense that this is not part of the NBC family? And God knows Matt Lauer is part of the Today Show. It's not as though they're having a truly distinguished, tough journalist handle this assignment.
No, and the other big question here is the morale at MSNBC, which has suffered, big ratings drops in recent years, and there's a kind of a crisis of identity going on there. And now you've basically got the parent company saying that a admitted liar is not good enough for NBC News job, but he's good enough for MSNBC. And if I worked there and was working hard to establish the news brand of MSNBC, I'd be offended by that.
Yes, I would too. I think we can both agree on that. Meanwhile, over at Fox, the Fox News channel, interesting moment. We had talked on the show last week about how Rupert Murdoch has installed his sons, James and Lachlan, in top executive jobs at his empire. And the minute that was announced, Roger Ailes, who is the 70-something-year-old head of the news channel, truly a powerful, almost, dinosaur within the realm of the Fox family there. But, he's created this brand that has been very valuable. He said he is not reporting to the children. He is going to report to Rupert Murdoch. And when the announcement about the roles that these two sons, James and Lachlan, will play was formally made, it turned out that Roger Ailes had gotten out a little in front of his skis with that announcement.
Yeah, it was very interesting. 21st Century Fox put out a very specific statement saying that Roger will be reporting to James and Lachlan Murdoch, which was a direct rebuke to what Ailes himself had said not 5 days earlier. And what that does, it really exposes the difference here in generations. Roger Ailes' relationship is with Rupert Murdoch. Rupert Murdoch is the one who recruited him to launch Fox News almost 20 years ago. He's the one that has the primary relationship, and Fox News accounts for about 20% of 21st Century Fox's profits. It is an extremely valuable property. And Roger Ailes did an interview with The Hollywood Reporter in April in which he said he doesn't have much of a relationship with James or Lachlan. That's a very key difference. And now you have this public rebuke of him. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lot going on behind the scenes between Ailes and these new leaders of the company.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some sort of winking and nodding going on, like, yes, Roger, just say you're going to do this and it'll be you and me, this coming from Rupert Murdoch. However, it's worth remembering that several years ago when Lachlan Murdoch was perceived as the heir to Rupert Murdoch, Roger Ailes helped to completely encircle and isolate Lachlan, who ended up leaving the company for a number of years and had to be lured back by his father. So this is not the first clash between Roger Ailes and the kids, and we'll have to see how it plays out. He's the only guy, who would even have the power to think he doesn't report to those two, and apparently he was told to correct that.
Well, and his contract is up next summer. So, it's very interesting. Would Fox News lose its leader in the middle of an election year? I don't think that would be ideal. But, the other thing is Rupert is 84 and Roger Ailes is 75. There is going to eventually be a generation shift at Fox News. And at least from the outside, it doesn't appear that there's any heir apparent there.
Also, that James and Lachlan, are not as conservative as Rupert, and Fox News, could be fairly offensive to people who are not as conservative as Rupert. And as long as we're talking about the upcoming or already ongoing presidential campaigns, Donald Trump, he announced again, I don't think we need to worry about his actual viability as a candidate. He's probably promoting himself and his celebrity apprentice, unless NBC takes it off the air because he's allegedly running for president, whatever. But the great story that our publication, The Hollywood Reporter, broke is that he hired actors $50 to come and cheer for him at his
Well, he offered them.
at his announcement.
We should say that he offered them. Now, the Trump campaign says they were never paid. Other sources have been saying that they were paid. But what we got was the official email from the campaign to a casting agency soliciting actors and offering them $50 to come to this event and cheer for Donald Trump. Now, you can argue whether that's part of his jobs plan. I don't know if it is or not. But it seems like not that much money to stand there and embarrass yourself at a media spectacle.
Yes, and let's be realistic. That is an acting challenge for most people. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
That's Matt Bellany of The Hollywood Reporter.
I've always thought that I was shaking people up, but now I want to go at it more, and I want to go at it more deliberately, and I want to go at it coldly. I want to shake people up so bad that when they leave a nightclub where I performed, I just want them to be to pieces. All right!
That is the high priestess of soul, Nina Simone, from an interview included in the new Netflix documentary, What Happened, Miss Simone. When our guest, Liz Garbus, set out to make a film about the restless songwriter and civil rights activist who died in 2003, her search for footage took her across continents. Fortunately, Garbus had Netflix money. Garbus found so much material that she was able to tell Simone's story largely through the artist's own words and music. She also interviewed Simone's former associates and her only child, Lisa Simone Kelly.
People think that when she went out on stage, she became Nina Simone. My mother was Nina Simone 24/7. And that's where it became a problem.
As a seasoned Oscar-nominated documentarian, Garbus knows finding funding is often difficult, especially when a project involves the daunting problem of licensing music. So she and her producing partners at Radical Media cast a wide net when they started pitching her Simone project.
Netflix came on board very, very aggressively and supportively right from the get-go. So it was really, and it has been a wonderful collaboration, and I've been so amazed, impressed by their support.
I cannot wait for the first person to come in here and say Netflix was a nightmare, because everybody who comes in here is like, oh my God, it was the best thing that ever happened.
Well, maybe there's truth to it. I think that sometimes there are these companies, and I think HBO is a company like this, which is so artist-friendly and allowing artists creative freedom, but also so smart about marketing that everything can really coalesce, and it can really be a great place to work.
Yeah, the magic combo. So you had in your mind that you wanted to do a film about Nina Simone. Is that what happened? Or Radical Media had in mind that somebody should do a film about Nina Simone?
The family and estate of Nina Simone felt that it was time that somebody make a documentary about Nina Simone. And what I mean by that is there had been false starts and tries over the years, and I think part of the reason was that they weren't necessarily ready or willing yet to kind of give up control, and that, filmmakers worth their salt would want to be able to tell their version of the story and not a estate-sanctioned version. So the estate partnered with Radical Media and invited me to pitch myself as a potential director for this project, which I did very enthusiastically and passionately. As a fan of Nina's, of course, my interest was piqued. But, for me as a filmmaker, the story has to have teeth. There could be somebody who's an extraordinary artist yet led an uninteresting life.
Right.
Well, this was not the case with Nina Simone. So it was certainly a story with tremendous drama and teeth and social and political relevance. Right. So I jumped for it.
Of course, the story could have teeth, and the family could say, could you please take out the teeth?
That's right. The family could say, could you please take out the teeth? But as you'll see, the teeth are there, yeah.
Yeah, the teeth are there.
Yeah.
Since Netflix had not done an original documentary before, but had shown a lot of interest in the documentary space, I'm just wondering how they got on your list. Was it a natural idea? Let's go to Netflix.
Well, they had been buying films out of festivals and then kind of getting on board through the film's festival life in very aggressive ways. So I think, they had been making it known to various people in the industry that they were available to have these types of conversations. They just kept on getting involved in projects earlier and earlier. It used to be that they were buying up stuff from catalogs, and now they were picking up things very aggressively at film festivals, and then it was like, let's talk to filmmakers in production, and that was what Radical did. They brought them in at that very early stage.
You were not in production, though.
We were in pre-production. That's right. We were pitching the film so that in order to be able to be in production.
Right. So they prevailed in this. And was there any thought, I assume they're going to give you a theatrical run to qualify the film. That was part of the deal.
Well, we were doing a theatrical run to do a theatrical run. We were doing a theatrical run because I think that movies still can be very much enjoyed in theaters, and it's a wonderful way to spend 2 hours in a theater watching a movie. So we are going to do that. So that will be happening just prior to the Netflix run.
I wonder, as a filmmaker, previously, I would assume your films had a far longer run theatrically and then went somewhere, some other platform, but maybe that's wrong.
Well, some films did. Some films had long theatrical runs before their broadcast, and some didn't, And I think with documentaries, television or the small screen now, as it's interpreted in many different ways, has been the way that most people see documentaries. And that's a wonderful thing that millions and millions of people will get to see them on the small screen. So I think for doc filmmakers and doc audiences, you have to be flexible about those theatrical runs. And frankly, as we all know, the business is changing and how people watch movies and think about content.
Right. I mean, that is the practical reality. So in this film, you must have had quite a quest. I mean, how do you even launch this incredibly, it sounds scattered. She lived in Africa, she lived in France, she lived in Switzerland. She was performing all over the place. How do you figure out this? Do you make yourself like this master list of potential places to get Nina Simone archives? Or is there a place online somewhere now where this all lives?
Well, we should create a place now that we've collected it all where it all lives. And that will be a task that, we can look to next. But you're absolutely right. It was scattered around the globe. And it was sort of like a scavenger hunt. You would talk to one person who would say, well, I think when she was in Switzerland, she left all her stuff with this friend of hers. And, we would go to Switzerland and find that friend of hers. So it was really a kind of a game of telephone and, from one person to the other to the other. Some of the stuff is collected online. But, a lot of the film is structured through interviews with Nina. So you really have Nina telling her own story. And all of that is, material that we uncovered that had never been organized or broadcast anywhere. So those were from many, many different parties that we brought together. And, it took, 6, 7, 8 months to bring all that material in.
At the very beginning, there's footage which is a little girl playing the piano. And I don't know if that's actual. It seems to be actual footage of Nina Simone, who was actually was named Eunice Wayman. Is that actual footage of her that you were able to find?
No, that is footage that I shot and created, intercut with documentary footage from the South in the 1930s and 40s. So we sort of spliced images of a little girl on a piano within the context of real footage.
Very convincingly, I might say. I was like, who shot that? Wow. That would be remarkable.
They had some foresight, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I thought maybe, she was taken under the wing of these two white ladies who wanted to teach her piano. And I thought maybe one of them had a home movie camera or something, and you were just unbelievably fortunate, but no.
That's right. No, she was a prodigy. She certainly was on people's radar, so it would not have been impossible. But no, that was not the case.
So what would you say would be the most unexpected thing that you found where you felt like you'd really you could score a victory lap because you didn't think that even existed?
Nina Simone had written an autobiography with a co-writer named Stephen Cleary, and one day it just sort of occurred to me, well, maybe he taped everything that they talked about, and maybe he has those tapes. So we finally tracked down this writer named Stephen Cleary, and he was in Australia, and he said, maybe I have them, but if I do have them, they would be in my home in the Pyrenees in France. And I'm not going to be back there for months, but you can call me in a few months. And, so we kind of kept on keeping on. And then finally, on January 1st, 2 years ago, he said, Happy New Year. I found them. And my producer was on a plane to France and transferring, we worked out a collaboration deal with him. And, we then had dozens and dozens of hours of Nina telling her life story, which was like, a gift from beyond the grave.
Absolutely. I read that you wanted to structure it like a musical, and I thought that was an interesting notion. I mean, musicals do have pretty specific bones inside of them. And I don't know whether you meant it that specifically or how you meant it.
What I meant about it being structuring it as a musical was I meant that the songs themselves would have a narrative function. So it would be more of a nonfiction musical, not a Broadway musical.
Right.
So the songs had to function both narratively and aesthetically. So when she meets the love of her life, you hear I Love You, Porgy. And when she is getting divorced, you hear Don't Smoke in Bed, which talks about leaving a long-term relationship. The Political Awakening, of course, is Young, Gifted, and Black, and Backlash Blues, and Mississippi Goddamn. So every song has both narrative and aesthetic function, and the songs play out. The songs do some of the heavy lifting of the storytelling work, as opposed to being window dressing for sound bites.
Coming up after a short break, Liz Garbus tells us how an earlier failed attempt to make a documentary on Nina Simone was a big blessing for her film. You're listening to The Business from KCRW.
Make a donation of just $1 a day and you can join one of our exciting and exclusive Angel Clubs. Choose from music, books, DVDs, or cookbooks delivered right to your front door. Learn more and join now at kcrw.com/join.
This is The Business, and I'm Kim Masters. We're talking to Liz Garbus, director of the new Netflix documentary, What Happened to Miss Simone. The film tells the story of Nina Simone, a childhood piano prodigy who became a music legend. Simone had many tempestuous relationships, especially with Andy Stroud, her abusive husband, a former cop who threw himself into managing Simone's career. A major conflict between the two arose when Simone used her fame and her gifts to support the 1960s civil rights movement. Stroud, who died in 2012, knew that controversy would hurt his wife's career and wanted her to keep the focus on her commercial appeal. One big piece of luck for Garbus in making What Happened to Miss Simone came when she found an old videotaped interview with Stroud that had never seen the light of day.
She wanted everything that money and success could buy. So I promised her that she was going to be a rich black bitch.
We had a blackboard, and you used to put on there, I'll be a rich black bitch by such a date. He said, you can quit. And I always believed him. And I never could quit because he worked me too hard.
You know, Nina, when she started out her career, she thought she would be a classical pianist. She was studying at Juilliard, and that was her vision of her career. It was black classical music. And then, you know, when the money ran out and she could no longer continue her classical education, she started playing in bars. Well, they told her in bars that she better sing if she wants to make money. So, you know, she never intended on being a singer. But then, you know, as her career evolved, she became quite famous for being a singer. And that was the career that her husband was nurturing. But it was never what Nina had planned for. And when the civil rights movement, when she started to get to know the leaders of the civil rights movement, the black intellectuals in New York, like Langston Hughes and James Baldwin and Lorraine Hansberry.
She knew everyone. It was just a very royal circle that she had. Malcolm X. I mean, all of these people were in her life.
That's right. And then that, for her, then became the ultimate expression of her work was, you know, as she said, using her music to sing for her people and to, you know, as she said, an artist's duty is to reflect the times. And that became her mission. But that was not the mission that Andy had signed up for, that he thought he had signed up for. And Nina felt that she was being overworked. And it's, you know, it's kind of the classic artist-manager conflict, but set amongst the most extreme circumstances of the civil rights movement, the violence and the passion of that movement.
And there's in one of the extraordinary interviews is with Andy, who I don't know, where did that come from?
So Andy, the interview with Andy many years ago, after Nina had died, but Andy was still alive, he and his daughter Lisa thought that maybe they would get together to make a documentary about their past together and about Nina. But as anyone who sees the doc will know that their relationship was fraught. So that project never came to be. I found the producer who was helping them make that, and he had these tapes in storage. When you asked before about one of the greatest surprises, I would say that was amongst them, because we had never, no one had ever heard or seen Andy talking about his career with Nina and his marriage with Nina before. But we were able, again, to collaborate with the producers who had that footage, and it was extraordinarily important for telling Nina's story.
Yeah, you must have been very pleasantly surprised to find that existed, I'm sure.
That's right.
So Nina's daughter, Simone's daughter, Lisa Simone Kelly, she is in the film. She's a producer on the film. Did she have any kind of editorial role?
She had no actual editorial role. She gave me no notes and no comments. I mean, I listened to her and I listened to her tell her stories. But no, ultimately, she had no editorial comments.
That's probably good, I guess. I mean, I'm assuming she's seen it and she gave you a reaction.
She has. We showed her the film before we went to Sundance with the film, and she was living in France, so she was, pretty far away from our edit process and our edit room. So there was kind of a good, separation there. And I was worried when I sent it to her. I thought, if somebody made a documentary about my mother, I'm sure there would be about 100 things that would make me cringe or I'd want to change. But she was amazing. She just sort of said, now I can stop trying to explain everything all the time. It's out there, it's in there. So I think it was a relief to her to have this kind of full portrait of her mother out there.
Now, the music rights are notorious in documentaries, the problems with licensing music. And so, we had done an interview with the person who made this film about Roger Ebert, and he used all kinds of movie clips and just fair used all of it and said he thought that was a documentarian's right to do. This is Steve James, who made Hoop Dreams and is an experienced person, and he said this is something that you all should take a stand on. And did you try to take that stand, or did you just have to license all of this music?
Well, music is fair use applies to clips and footage, but to my knowledge, music is outside of the current understanding of what is fair usable. I think that if you're interviewing somebody and there's some music playing in the background in the car, that maybe you don't have to pay for the rights of that music. But if you're using music as a aesthetic quality of your film, either as score, soundtrack, or primary the primary audio of your film, it doesn't apply to fair use. A fair use doesn't apply to us, so you've got to pay.
And that was where Netflix probably came in super handy.
That's right. Making films about art, about artists and musicians is not cheap.
Yeah, so you do need some serious muscle behind you, because it is really expensive, right? No matter how you might think, it's not new music, it's not Taylor Swift. Does it really matter?
No, I mean, music is very expensive, and there are stakeholders that have to get paid. And when you're thinking about making films like this, you have to take that into consideration.
And is it, I mean, I don't even know this, but is it a sliding scale depending on how big the song was? If it's a big famous song versus something maybe more obscure?
I think it can be, but even those obscure songs, it depends. Sometimes it depends on the artist, on the publisher, and on the label. So there's not really a hard rule of thumb there.
I would think on something like "I Love You, Porgy," you've got the Gershwin estate to deal with, or
right.
Whoever.
You have estates to deal with. Often, you can end up making these most favored nations deals where you get everyone to kind of come together and give you a certain price. That is ideally how it should work out.
Now, you deal with a lot of political stuff in your filmmaking. I mean, I don't know if that was a point where, do you have the same kind of, the conflict we talked about, commercial versus political, when you think about subjects for films, or do you just figure I'm going to go for whatever I want to go for and hope that it flies?
Yeah, I think I'm more just driven by, the seat of my pants, so to speak. I go for the stories that I want to tell. But I think that, the upside for an artist like Nina Simone and the commercial, the visions of dollar signs that a manager might have for someone like her, that her husband would have are, it's kind of a different upside than what a documentary filmmaker and an independent filmmaker looks at.
That's
so
true.
Maybe the struggle is less profound and pronounced.
You don't have to go triple platinum.
That's right. I mean, and I choose my subjects by what I'm passionate about and what I think I want to spend, because you spend a few years on these films. So
yeah, how long did this one take?
It took about 2 years, and,
which is really fast, actually, right?
That's fairly compressed for a film. And I think that's partially because our funding, Netflix was so, they were so behind us from the beginning that we could properly staff up and start making a movie.
What a concept, right, for a documentarian?
How about that?
Liz Garbus is the director of What Happened, Miss Simone, which will be available on Netflix starting June 26th. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
My baby just cares for me.
And that's The Business. Caitlin Parker produced and edited today's program with production assistance from Ray Guarna and Melissa Morton. You can hear The Business on demand with the KCRW smartphone app and get the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you download podcasts. I'm Kim Masters. We'll see you next week on The Business.
And even Lana Turner's smile. Something he can't see.
My baby just